Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, I hope to offer some new insights on an old nursery rhyme actually. And that's what I want to start doing is I want to start evaluating stories and songs, things that we are somewhat familiar with, that we think we know, and just doing a deeper dive on those through the archetypal lens and looking at the symbolism to see what new things we can pull from them. So I hope that you enjoy the message today. I hope that it's enlightening and entertaining and inspiring and encouraging. So in the spirit of the Bible verse, seek and you shall find, I like to think that there is treasure to be found if we are willing to face the darkness, and furthermore, for those of us unafraid to not just face it, but to dive deep down, right? It kind of goes along with another verse, which is that you have to have eyes to see and ears to hear, right? So just like when Jesus spoke in parables, right, for his teachings, it's always been dangerous to just explicitly put truth out there, just totally unveiled, just totally for the eyes of all to see, because obviously some are likened to swine in the Bible, right? And that, we're told that if we cast our pearls before them, they will trample them beneath their feet. And there are people like that, as you know, in this world that just wake up with a chip on their shoulder, or what I like to say, or translate to, just a whole lot of unprocessed, unfaced traumas that they haven't worked through, right? We all have the opportunity to work through them to the best of our abilities. Not that it's easy, but I can certainly appreciate those people who try, and that's proven in changed behavior, right? That's what we can look for. And so, but in order to protect yourself, which is very necessary in this crazy world, right? Sometimes you have to get creative with expressing truth. And so in doing so, us on the other side of things, right? The one who's actually viewing the artwork or listening to the song or whatever it is, we can then be motivated to pick it apart and kind of see, is there a deeper message here? Sometimes there may not be, but that's what's so intriguing to me about archetypal psychology is that it's been identified that there are these these shared big truths, right, that we all know are real and true, even if it's only within our unconscious, right? Like that part, the reserved, dark parts of our psyche. It's like we're all connected in that way, right? There's even been terms considered and theories built upon, such as ancestral memory, and I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it's just such a mystery. So many awesome mysteries in this reality, right? And it's, to me, how could you ever get bored in this reality? There's always just so many things to explore, and that in itself, even if you're not somebody who's just really into solitaire type hobbies, to me there's just so much in this reality to explore, that it's in itself should motivate us when we get up in the morning, to be like, what am I going to learn today, and then to be able to share that with one another. It's just another level of enjoyment for me anyway. And so I just hope to encourage you to approach life in that manner, especially when it starts to feel heavy, because it can certainly get that way for all of us depending on the season that we're in. So I just encourage you to consciously make that shift in your mind to go from a victim mindset, which is not, I don't think, well, unless you're a narcissistic person looking to exploit that, I think that for most of us, it's not a conscious decision approach life from a victim mindset. It's just we can find ourselves there sometimes, and rightfully so. Sometimes we have been victims of psychological abuse or any kind of abuse. Sometimes we truly are, but we don't want to stay there. We want to move out of that and learn and grow, right? And be able to enjoy the gift that life really is. That's what I hope for myself and for all of you and for everyone, right? And so it just reminds me of something that an old friend of mine mentioned when I was talking to her one day, and I forget exactly how she said it. She was really cool. She could say a whole lot with few words. Wish I could be like that. But she said something like, people don't do anything at all, unless there's a benefit to them. And I thought that was really interesting. It's one of those things where I feel like sometimes we're inclined to immediately think of a yeah but kind of response to those things, but if you're willing to pause and sit with it and think on it for a minute, it's kind of like the truth begins to expand slowly and open up to you, and you start to see what the person's talking about. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's people who look to exploit a position of victimhood, I feel like, that just are comfortable there, and a lot of times you can see, what their game really is. And so I'm getting way off. I'm going way off here on a tangent. Let me just like pull myself back in here. but yeah, truth in general should be treated as a pearl. Sometimes, especially certain aspects of it, I feel like I think it's you have to use discernment with it. That's what I'm getting at. You have to really use discernment with it, because it's like you want to live totally truthfully, but as far as like casting your pearls like vocally, I mean, again, our example, through the Christian lens is Jesus, and even he spoke truth in parables. So there's something to that, you know what I mean? There's always the powers of this reality that are benefiting from operating in the darkness, that seek to stomp out the truth. And you want to survive as long as possible, right? I mean, like, I know I do. And you want truth to survive too, right? Like through those of us who are carrying that. And so you have to be smart. You have to be smart in how you operate. And so that's going to be illustrated today. And we're going to be looking at the archetypal message that is creatively expressed in the nursery rhyme Rock-a-Bye Baby. Okay? And so this is really interesting to me. When you look at let's just go through the lyrics real quick, okay? So it's Rock-a-Bye Baby on the treetop. Okay, trees are very symbolic. When the wind blows, right? When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. So it's kind of like, oh, how comforting. How comforting is that to sing to a little baby? You're in a treetop, the wind's going to start blowing, the branch is going to break, and you're going to fall down all the way to the ground. So comforting, isn't it? It's kind of like, what? When you really start looking at a lot of things like that through a critical eye, it's sort of mind-blowing, really. And a lot of times we just operate so automatically in this just this mode of just not essentially, we're not being conscious, like in the moment, the present moment. And sometimes it takes someone else to kind of shake us awake, and it can be your child that's like drifting off to sleep, and maybe they're maybe they're not an infant, maybe they're a toddler, and they're drifting off, and you're singing to them, but when they hear this kind of lyrics, their eyes pop wide open, and you're thinking, wait a minute, because as a parent, you're like, please go to sleep, and it's like, what's going on? And you at that point, flip it around on yourself and evaluate, like, what did I just say? And you realize this super old nursery rhyme is not so comforting after all. And it's like, why is that? So I'm not going to go too into the I'm not going to go at all into the history of this nursery rhyme. You can look it up. It's really interesting. And I think that there's Of course, different opinions on it, and there's several sites who share the same opinion, and how there's like a political message that was illustrated in this nursery rhyme from the era that it came from, so you can look into that. But there's a few other opinions on it as well. But what I'm going to do is offer you a unique perspective that was very interesting to me, and I hope that it will be for you too. And it's going to just furthermore illustrate the power of archetypes, and you can then take this concept and apply it to everything if you have interest. So we're going to be looking at the symbolism of the tree, the cradle, the wind, the main points in the story. So with trees, they're just huge throughout fairy tale, folklore, myth, stories. You got the tree of life, the world tree, the cosmic tree, the tree of knowledge, even in the Bible, right, in the Garden of Eden. So typically, with all of these very important trees that I just mentioned to you in these stories and parables and myth and everything, typically the higher elevation on the tree, which in this nursery rhyme, it's mentioned that the cradle is in the tree top, right? It's on the top of the tree, or in the top part of the tree. Well, this tree is typically in these stories throughout myth, the purpose of it is to connect the higher realms and the lower realms, right? Heaven and earth, or you might say heaven and the underworld, and we're somewhere in the middle here in this reality. So that seems to be a recurring theme, right, that the symbolism of the tree stands for. So just keep in mind that the placement of the cradle in the tree is significant, in my opinion. It would symbolize heaven, right, or being close to heaven. So and then it says, when the wind blows. Well, wind is air in motion, right? But before we get too far into that, I want us to take a look at the cradle, which is sitting up here at the higher elevations in the tree, close to heaven, or in the Garden of Eden, you might say. And a cradle, I found from the 1580s. Again, this is from one of my favorite resources, the Online Etymology Dictionary. From the 1580s, a cradle means the place where any person or thing is nurtured in the early stages of existence. So you may think of like a mother's womb, or you may think of, just a baby that is protected in just a very comforting and wonderful place. So again, to me, both the cradle and the placement in the tree are leaning towards some sort of paradise type place, or heaven, or you might say in relation to this physical world, like the Garden of Eden. Okay. Now what happens in the story? Well, the wind starts blowing, right? And I believe it's in the Bible, Satan is referred to as the prince of the air, I believe. And so wind, you can look into that term and just look into the etymology, really interesting. But what stuck out to me, is, okay, this is really relevant in this application, is the fact that one of the definitions of wind is like in the context of to catch wind of, I caught wind of XYZ. In other words, to receive information about. Okay, so let's piece together this symbolism. Okay, so if the wind represents receiving information, and you're just totally comfortable in your cradle, you're protected, you're nurtured, just like was God's intentions with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? And then this wind comes along, right? It could be like, pss, 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 pss. You might think of the serpent coming along and doing some whispering and bringing some information, right? So Adam and Eve are receiving this information, or Eve is receiving this information. And then what happens? It causes them to fall from God's grace. What happens in the nursery rhyme? The cradle falls, the bough breaks, the supporting beam breaks because of the wind, and the cradle falls. And so I definitely think that we can certainly see the value in the archetypal symbolism in this nursery rhyme. I can. It just seems so relevant to me. And again, it goes back to, zooming so far out that you can see this grander, greater truth that seems to encompass everything. And it's like, it doesn't matter which lens you use to evaluate it. In the end, when you get down to the, you're digging and you get down to the foundation of it, it's one truth. It's one truth, one great truth. Different bits and pieces, but ultimately one truth. And so I thought that was super interesting, right? So the cradle falls. I view this as symbolic as a fall from grace, God's grace, or being cast out of Eden, okay? So what is God's point here? Let's look at this through the spiritual lens. What is God's point? To me, it's that we think we have the capacity to know as God knows, right? But spiritually, here's the thing. We don't see ourselves this way. This is where we get, in the South, you might say, too big for your britches, right? Or your ego just grows so much, right? Spiritually, we are children, right? But we don't see ourselves that way. But God sees us that way, okay? We are spiritually children, excuse me. We're spiritually children, just children, no matter how old you get, no matter how old you are, right? And so this is why it is said also, just to affirm this, let's just take different angles, okay? And try to just evaluate it from all angles. Test this theory that I have of the meaning here behind this story that we're building and the symbolism that we found. This is why it is said in the Bible, right, that we must become as little children again to enter the kingdom of God. What does it mean again? It's like, okay, well, if you're saying that we're all children spiritually, then why do we need to become children again? It's because it's all about our conscious awareness. It's all about God sees us as children, right? We are spiritually like a child, but we don't see ourselves that way. So to become as little children again would mean to consciously admit that, you know what, I really don't know as much as I thought I did. You know what? It's kind of like that old saying, the more you learn, the more there is to learn. It's like life humbles you in that manner. It kind of puts you back in your place. You know what I'm saying? And so it's kind of all saying the same thing. It's all saying the same thing. And so to become as little children again, it means to consciously recognize, you know what? I am just a child intellectually as compared to the Almighty, okay? And so what it requires to do so is surrender, essentially. It's surrendering that, God is the one who holds the ultimate intellect, right? And judgment, not us. And no matter how much we strive, we're never going to be on his level. You know what I mean? So it requires surrender. And so the story is kind of like a warning, really, just acting as part of a story to help guide humanity, like so many stories, in that as soon as we perceive something and we act from our perception, we have to understand that we are doing so from our own limited understanding. And every time we act only from our limited human intellect, there will be some level of failing. There will be some lessons to learn. There will be some falling and having to get back up again and dusting ourselves off and trying again. And so if we start from the position of being humble to begin with, we're going to be so much better off, right? And so to me, that's the lesson. That's the lesson right there. It's not that you have to approach life like, okay, I give up. I don't know anything then. It's not like that. Again, it's not black and white thinking. It's not like, but see, that's how some people operate. Like I was mentioning earlier, a victim mindset. It's like, way on this end of the spectrum. And then you have people with a huge ego, narcissistic type person way over here on this end of the spectrum. And we don't want to hang out on either side. We want to be comfortably in the middle, consciously in the middle, in a surrendered place, but also feeling empowered because we understand that we are supported. If we are humble enough to allow ourselves to be supported, from a higher power, then we can operate from a place of humility, but still from that place of being nurtured spiritually, right? In that cradle, you might say, accepting our position, our place, right? So anyway, I thought that was really interesting. And the thing about being a humble person is a narcissistic person who truly is consciously operating in the darkness, knowingly using people, abusing people, taking advantage of people, they exploit our humility. And so the reason I go into evaluating the darkness and all these different concepts on my channel is not because I like it, it's because I want to protect all of us, because we are instructed to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. It comes natural to those of us who have goodness in our heart to operate innocent as doves, but we have to work at the wise as serpents part of it, without letting it bring us down. And so it's just important to me. So yeah, it's kind of like, just to wrap up this one story, this one song, nursery rhyme, if you're operating with humility and you fall, it's not going to be just totally detrimental, you'll be able to recover. However, if you're not operating with humility, like a narcissistic person, then the fall can equate to total destruction. See? And so in that truth, if we can really grasp that can serve as comfort to us in God's greater design. It's kind of like karma, the concept of karma, and we can take comfort in that. You know what I mean? So, but if we look for archetypal symbolism everywhere, we can see that we have actually been warned of the darkness and the snares and the traps, just repeatedly, just over and over. And again, I mentioned earlier about, having the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Even in a free country, it's like you may not be, judged or banned at that level from a governmental level, but you may be socially. So it's just best not to cast your pearls. I just advise you to look throughout history at how it's been done for centuries, how truth has been preserved and how it's been shared, because it was done in the way it was done for a reason. See? So it's like, when you can do this, when you really understand that there's more than what meets the eye in these stories and all the different ways that art is expressed, oral tradition through storytelling and myths and folklore and fairy tale, and also in paintings, the visual arts, in music and lyrics, all the different arts, right? Poetry. When we can start to grasp the archetypal symbolism that points us to the greater truth, then it's like it opens up a whole new world. And you realize that you were never alone. When you went through hard times and you literally came face to face with darkness in your life, and you felt so alone because nobody else understood your situation or believed you, because it looked one way to the outside, but you knew the truth. You can feel so alone in those times, those trying and challenging times. But when you can, like I said, look back throughout history and truly understand the pearls that were hidden, right? They weren't cast out because they were treated as treasure. Okay, and these people wanted to have them preserved. And so they were preserved for us even today, but you have to look for them, and you have to have the eyes to see, the ears to hear. And when you can do that, it should bring you comfort that you were never alone in your trials and in your troubles, It has for me. It's brought me comfort. So even throughout the millennia, you were never alone. Essentially, you're people who seek truth, who value truth, who live by truth, who preserve truth. That's your people when you're a truth seeker and a truth teller and an honest and good person, right? Not perfect. None of us are perfect. But when you have goodness in your heart, those are your people. And when you look back on history, you realize that they have learned to operate smartly, wisely. And so from the outside in, from the outside world looking in on the people who are sharing these stories, right, in movie form and story form and theories and philosophies and paintings and myth and whatever it is, songs. From the outside in, when you see a person expressing some type of creative art in this way, it looks like they're playing solitaire. Don't you just kind of envision an artist like a loner? You know what I mean? But the beautiful thing is, when you're on the inside, when you come into this awareness of truth preserved within the creative arts to protect the pearls of truth, when you come into this awareness, you step into it fully, and you can see it everywhere. Now you're on the inside, okay? So from the inside looking out, you realize not only were you not alone, but we're actually united. We're all united. And we're not playing solitaire, we're playing chess. See? And so the darkness may feel like it's got the upper hand, but in the end, it's not the case. And so I just encourage you to take comfort in that, and just to take that into your heart, because that's truth for me. That's truth for me, and hopefully it will be for you too. So this world, depending on our level of awareness, seems to have us in a position of a slippery slope. And let me expand on this. We can normalize things unconsciously that keep us on the wrong path. And this is what keeps us stuck. This is what keeps us from our blessings sometimes. Okay? So it's really important to intentionally pause, even when things seem, no matter how they seem, whether they seem good, and you're not being tested or tried, or whether they seem, really awful, and, you just don't even know if you can go on. I just always encourage you to get into the habit of pausing, okay? Questioning things, and especially having some methods already in place that you can go back to and implement, okay? Some type of method, something that you can develop that works for you to check your tether. Here's what I mean. Your tether to what you know to be true. What you know to be true. Because, like I said, you can find yourself in a position where, and maybe I'll do a video just on this to expand on this, but hopefully you know what I mean. It's like you can just find yourself, it's like you can make such progress in life on just your awareness and learning things. And then, one day, you're somehow off your path, but you don't know how you got there, and you're like, man, I was just doing so great, but I just feel really burdened and confused today. What happened? Well, that's the time right there. That's especially a good time. It's like a cue for you to pause and question some things and figure out what happened. And when I say check your tether, I mean, like, make sure you turn and you look at these established truths that are not dependent or contingent on anything out there, but that are true and good and serve the good in this world, right? And then just check and see, like, where did you get disconnected? That's what I mean with your tether. A tether is what keeps you rooted in those truths. It's like that it got severed, okay, somewhere along the way. And when that happens, that's when we can find ourselves getting exploited, getting taken advantage of, coerced, to benefit the darkness in this world, someone who is a con or whatever it is. So just, check your tether, have some methods in place to do that, and just make sure that your connection to the bigger truths has not been compromised. If it has, fix it. So just, I encourage you, don't slip into the underworld, into, these feelings of despair. Just be strong enough. It's not easy, but you have to be strong enough to pull yourself out of it. Just look to the truth that is always there. You have to look deeper, but it's everywhere you look. And I just encourage you to look. And continue to educate yourself in that manner so that you can see it. Remember, wisdom is the principal thing. And with all you're getting, get understanding. Understanding is crucial, right? That can certainly serve as your tether. And then just make adjustments and changes, to make sure that it can't be compromised again. And so I hope that this has been encouraging, and I hope that it got the wheels turning for you, especially today. I hope you're motivated to go and do your own research and find some more things that you're curious about, that you want to do a deep dive on, and to strengthen your self-assurance, and to know that everything is going to be okay. So thank you so much for coming along to listen to the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.